All right. Hello, this is Rebecca Langman. I am an interior designer. I own Revision Custom Home Design here in Billings, Montana. Today I am going to be live streaming the creation of a interior design concept board. So this is something that I create for my clients early on in the design phase, where we're really trying to just get a sense of what different materials you might try and use. Maybe if there's a few key pieces of furniture or a few elements, I guess, for lack of a better term, that we're trying to use in the space to really help the client and myself communicate well back and forth. Being an interior designer, I am a visual person. Words sometimes tend to escape me when I need them. That's okay, but because not all words are not always the most efficient way to communicate when you're talking about colors and materials and images, visual. Um, So I've got Photoshop pulled up here and I'm working on the materials board. I just pulled in a couple quick images for this particular client. This is a commercial space. It's actually the office for the boss owner of the company. And he's got his offices mostly squared away for his employees and everything, but he's creating this new little office space, kind of somewhat separate from the rest of the building. So he's got his own little private entrance that takes this little suite that has space for a little office for him. It's actually kind of an open space with an office on one end and wants to have like a conference table for the purpose of podcasting. And then adjacent to that, there's two other smaller offices that'll be used as a conference room and one, as he called it, as the war room. So the main space is kind of big and open, and it's got these little side spaces. Um, Kind of a masculine space for sure, definitely more masculine than a lot of ones that I've gotten the chance to design lately. A lot of my clients are female, they are. So this is kind of fun to get to design something different. And then I've already gone in. This image down here in the corner is a desk that he sent me that he had found online somewhere. I'm not sure if we'll end up using this exact desk. It's really, really awesome. I actually really like it. But just given the layout of the space where you're coming in from the main, there's an exterior entrance and then there's an entrance to connect to the rest of the offices. It just would get lost. It's kind of tucked back in a corner. You really wouldn't see it. So I think we'll probably not do that, but I think we're going to use this as inspiration for perhaps having maybe a custom conference table designed middle of the room where these podcasting episodes will be shot, filmed, recorded. I don't know all the terminology, but anywho, so what we're doing is right now the space, I guess previously it was used as a scuba shop. So the floor is this cobalt blue epoxy. We are most definitely covering up. And we're looking at doing something in an LVP, which is a very versatile product, has a really wide range of colors. And I want to do something with a little bit of kind of a gray wash, but just really some interest to it. And then there is one wall in the space that, or actually two, that have a raw cedar paneling on planking. And we're going to sand that up, finish it. And for that, I want to go a little bit darker. So I love this uh, wood LVP look here. When I'm creating image boards, I use just Google image search. And I'm going to do, anyway, I'm going to look for basically just a sample image that kind of shows what it is that I'm trying to convey to both the client, the contractor that's going to. I don't necessarily want to go gray because gray can be really, really cold. It has a really nice natural color to it. I just want to darken it up a bit. So I'm trying to find, I'm going to take gray out of my search. I want to try and find a wood tone that is going to complement an LVP, but really highlight this wall without making the space crazy. Actually, I know you can't see. Doing a Google image search, trying darker. Hmm. Try cedar stain. I like that. Pull this image. Now I'm going to drag and drop that image that I just found. My Photoshop thing. Window. Again, if you haven't watched me before, if you haven't followed me on Facebook or anything, I am not a Photoshop expert. I do what I can. I've figured out tips and tricks that make what I need to do fairly easy for me, but by no means do I know all of the correct terminology or even the correct steps to take. I am going to rotate this 90 degrees because I want to, as often as possible, I try to make this as really easy for the client to understand as possible. And actually, I'm going to do that one more time. There we go. So now the light's up there at the top of that image, and it just looks a little more natural. It looks more like wall paneling. Here we go. And then previously I had undo. See, I don't know if I could just do the wrong thing. Hang on one second here. Okay, select that. I got my light up at the top where I wanted it, which is awesome. All right. There we go. That's how I did it. How much? That would stay over top of the paint. There we go. So now what we've got here are a couple of my primary materials for the space. We have an LVP flooring that has touches of gray that doesn't fight with this darker stain that we're going to suggest using on the wood paneling, the cedar paneling that's already there. And the great thing about it is that because it's a totally raw cedar paneling, we're not having to fight what's there. I think we'll be able to get a really beautiful dark color without the process of having to stain everything off and hoping that we dug deep enough with the sanding to get the stain to take. But now there are a few little spots. There's like a little beam that has a oak wrap on it. We'll probably, instead of again fighting that to try and change it, we'll probably get more of this cedar and just wrap that beam, make it a little chunkier. But that'll also make the staining process easier since we won't have to be trying quite so hard to match. Now I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger. I think I want that to be. There we go. All right. So there we go. So we've got that pulled up there, which is awesome. Okay. So we've got our main materials for the space. We have sort of this grayish wall color. Grayish is a color sort of halfway between gray and beige because we don't want anything that's too cold in this space. There's not going to be a lot of soft surfaces per se, so we don't want anything that's going to psychologically feel too cold. So grayish is a really nice contrast. It's not dated and pinky and beige, but it just has a little more life to it than a crisp gray would. And this floor, I think, really encompasses a really good mix of all of that. Now we've got this piece right here, and this is kind of our centerpiece. This is this amazing desk. I'm going to make that image actually larger. And I'd already gone in before I started this stream and done just a real quick cut around the edges. So I did my polygon lasso tool, snapped all my corners, and removed the background so I can float this around in the back. But move it up to my top layer. There we go. I can move it around kind of anywhere I want. So now what I want to do is find, well, okay, so every design concept board has different inspiration. In this case, the guy that's this space is for mentioned that he is an absolute history buff. In fact, he actually went to college for history teaching to be a teacher, and ended up in a different industry, as very often happens. And he absolutely loves old airplanes, kind of like the World War II era. So if we can bring in some elements, like maybe something with maybe some metal panels with some riveting. The thing with themes is I love having a concept for a theme without necessarily copying it 100%. This does not mean that we're going to hang up artwork of a time. Well, he has a couple really cool pieces. But we're going to limit those because it becomes almost too much when you try to use when you try to essentially copy an item as your theme. We're not trying to copy an airplane, we're trying to take inspiration from it. So we're looking maybe potentially at some of the materials, maybe at some of those curved or angular shapes. I just found an image here, save, and I'm going to pull this in just as an inspiration image here into our Photoshop. Look at that. Because this is when it's a concept board like this, it really is kind of a mood board. A lot of designers are moving away from using that term because it's a little general. It doesn't really define what it is that we're trying to accomplish. But I think it makes a lot of sense to do a mood board, especially in the early phases of a project, and especially when you are trying to get to know your client a little bit better, seeing if this is what he meant when he started, spouting off about how much he likes airplanes. I think this is pretty cool. So now that we have kind of that inspiration image up there at the top, ooh, I one more little inspiration image. All right. I'll put that back there, but I'm going to hide that back those. All right. But I really like the way that looks, and I think we can maybe do something really cool with uh, bringing in some of those metal elements, maybe something with rivets. Maybe when we frame some of these pictures of the airplanes that he likes, maybe we can do something cool with the picture frame, or oh, we'll get creative. We will come up. So we've got kind of that main space here. He is going to recarpet a couple of the offices, but honestly, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to bother putting that on this board because that's something pretty sure we could find a little grayish, gray beige, dark carpet in that space. I'm not too worried about it. What I want to look for next is lighting. And I have, of course, my favorite local vendor has a great selection, but for the purpose of this concept board, I'm just going to kind of look for something. Looking for some flush mount fixtures because we don't have a huge ceiling height to work with here. It's I think it might actually be a pretty standard 8-foot ceiling. Correctly. So I don't really have the ability to go like crazy with like a chandelier or something like that. And really that wouldn't make space. Unless we found one really cool, very shallow, kind of a semi-flush. But more what we need to find is basically a surface mount light fixture that'll replace the ugly 80s. We've all seen them, long 4-foot fluorescent tube, that plastic, sharp, triangular grid cover on it. The one thing the client said is he really wasn't a fan of LED lighting. But I think I'm going to need to have him go into our local store and actually see what the different things are because I think it might be more of a light temperature thing than the LED type in specific. All right. And sometimes the problem with wanting to do, just finding images off of Google that some places don't want you to take their image, which I totally get. And I'm not trying to get around any kind of copyright things. I'm usually using images off of vendor websites when I'm finding these images, which by me sharing those images, it helps the vendor because that way. So now I'm using on this particular one though, it doesn't want me to save the image. It's trying to give me to save it as a web page. So I am using the grab tool to grab this image I need, drop this on. necessarily a pretty fixture, but definitely an improvement on what was there before. Okay, so now I'm going to my polygonal lasso tool, and I am tracing my perimeter. Not want my whole. Okay, so when you see that little circle, that means you've got a closed loop that you can close off. And then I just use my layer mask tool to essentially delete that background. Now I'm going to Control T. That's how you can transform quickly. Real quick, move this on up over here into the corner. Really don't need to see all of it. It's there. It's better than what was there before, but I'm not going to focus too much on it. But I do want to find one really cool fixture if possible to go over this table, this conference table where they're going to podcast. Go back here and I'm going to semi-flush fixture modern is what I'm typing in. Okay, let's see what I can find here. They don't have a lot, like I said, they don't have a lot of headroom. I think it would be really cool in combination with replacing those fluorescent lights to do something in the middle of the room that just, I don't know, just is a wow factor. Okay, so this. I apologize that you can't see me scrolling through Google here, but found another one. The better be. Sometimes you have to dig in to find the image. So again, I'm going to have to use my little screen grab snippy tool to get the image. But there we go. Got it, I've got it. All right. That. All right, I'm coming back. This. Yay. Pause. Okay. Again, I'm going to have to use my polygonal lasso. Why can I not speak? All right. Probably because the word lasso. All right. I'm going to come around the edge. With these. And I'm back to the beginning. So there's my 0. And I could actually carve out a couple of these little side sections, but for this purpose, I'm not. I was truly trying to create almost more of like halfway between a mood board and a rendering where I was trying to show pieces in relationship to each other. Then I probably would cut out these little mid sections just so that way I didn't have any worries about that interfering with whatever I picked for the skin color. But there we go. Now I'm going to that awesome light fixture. Actually, I might that down because it's not huge. There we go. Yeah, there we go. I like it there. Awesome. Now we've got our kind of utilitarian, but still better than before, light fixtures for a big chunk of the space. this fixture, I've seen it a number of times before in various different configurations. So each one of these little rectangles that you can see, they've got a metal edge band that goes all the way around them, and the inner surface of that edge band is like an LED strip. So it almost appears like the square is illuminated and glowing, but it does put out a pretty decent light. But it comes in different sizes and configurations, so we could do something that's pretty big and kind of spread out with these larger rectangles over the conference table, and then have a smaller mini version of this just a few feet away in office corner. So in the office corner, the client mentioned that he wanted probably one regular height surface and then one sit stand option desk. And I don't want anything that looks like white and obnoxious, but there are obviously limits on what a sit stand like or will. For example, here's one. Now here I found a sit stand desk. Okay, I found this. Yay! And that's actually not too bad. It's got the wood or the wood top and then the metal base. So it fits in with kind of the scheme that we're doing. I'm leaning towards these black fixtures. They're kind of the right amount of oomph we need in space. Really offset some of these other materials because we're not necessarily going for rustic, but I like the contrast of some of these natural materials um, with the more industrial airplane inspired stuff as well. So again, I'm just doing real quick kind of work around budget on those. Oh, tracing my perimeter so that I can put this in the image and not and be able to overlap it without having that white background box. A little more. Okay, so tracing the edges. Almost there. Imagine trying to do this with like potted plant. Every little magnetic. So that being said, as much as I'm showing you my process in Photoshop, if you are a Photoshop wizard, I would probably love comment. I'm doing wrong. All right, so there we go. Yay, I've traced the whole thing. I love how this one has drawers. I think do my quick layer mask and then use my transform tool to shrink this on down. Now, I'm not necessarily, like I said, I'm not trying to do a quasi rendering where the pieces are next to each other in relation as they would be in the space, but I do want to be somewhat aware of the scale of things. So, for example, this desk is kind of back in the corner a little ways. It's not necessarily going to be visible from everywhere. This conference table, however, I think I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger. I really want that to be sort of the visual focus, which I'm probably going to end up playing around with. I don't know. We'll see. But and that means also that this light fixture here probably fit with there. Okay. There's that. I think that's pretty nice. So we've got very unobtrusive overall light fixture, which there are 6 in the main space, 4 in the side space, 4 in the side office. There are a whole bunch of those fixtures that can be replaced, but I don't want them to be that old, dated look. Would look horrible. So anyway, uh, so then the next thing is we do need a few, or we do need to be somewhat aware of noise. Um, this is currently a space with a lot of hard surfaces. They're going to be doing any kind of podcasting. We need to be a little bit aware of muffling those sounds. Now there is one front window space, kind of exterior window, that we will be putting some sort of a shade on it. My first thought was simply do like a cellular shade that fits in the window because the purpose of it is more privacy than anything, but it will do the double duty of um, having just a little bit of a soft surface that sound can keep on. I don't know that we'll add any curtain panels because it's really not that look of space. My first thought, though, for adding a little bit more of that sound baffling is do perhaps a felt grid wall. And there's cool products that I've seen where it's basically you order a collection of squares and triangles, and you can pick one color, two colors, three colors, whatever. You can do a design. I've seen artwork out of it where they make little shapes and houses and whatnot, or just get the squares and arrange them on the wall. This felt does the job of kind of catching those sound waves and just keeping the room echoey. But it can also add a nice little color element to the space. They can be in the middle of the wall, they can be up near the top. And in addition to that, in an office space, they can also be used as a bit of a pinboard, or like brainstorming sessions and you have some stuff up kind of on a bulletin board. Another client did send me a picture that he found of what appeared to be almost like a big giant, like remember back in elementary school when you would have when the teacher would bring in that portable chalkboard that was on wheels, kind of like that, except it went down further. It was just a big giant frame, and it was a whiteboard surface that was also magnetic, and then just had a metal frame around the edge. So something like that would be kind of cool because it would be movable. If he needed to use it to kind of divide off his office temporarily, he could. So we might do something like that in one of the. I feel like this board is missing. I can't quite put my finger on what it is. Probably plants. But this being dude's office, I don't know. Although we did talk about one little potted plant in the corner. Maybe that wouldn't be out there. I think maybe that's what it is. I think I just feel like this is too far spread out. So I'm just gonna grab these things. Swatch a little bit. We escape key that. A couple of these bigger. Our floor and image. Now, usually I have a black frame that I use as a border on the, but it might be a little too girly for this particular image. So find it real quick. Here we go. Okay. Really quick, and again, I'm going to use my last one. First, I'm going to real quick rotate this. Yeah. 90. Then I'm going to use my lasso to zoom in. Actually, I'm going to use the magnetic. This one's got the curves. That edge. No, I don't. Start over. And I didn't do that. Okay, polygonal. I know what I'm doing. Okay. I'm just going to follow that corner pretty tight. Out. Oops. This corner. I just realized I forgot I was doing this backwards. Okay. I need to include my black line and exclude the middle. So I need to start on the outside. There we go. Don't use. Now, in this case, I probably didn't need to necessarily trim my outside. Sometimes I do this where I make my border overlap the images, but I think everything I've got fits really well inside frame. But in order to cut out the middle, I have to create an exterior bounding. First, oops. I'm tracing my edges. There we go. I know what I'm doing. Okay, so just okay. I'm at my corner now. I've got everything selected, but I don't want to get rid of this whole. I do want to get rid of the outside, but I also want to get rid of the inside. So what I need to do is I hit the Alt. No. There we go. So if I press the Alt key, you see how that little plus changed to a minus? Now I can go back to this corner, and I don't have to hold that. Oh. Now I can come like this. I'm essentially carving out this section of the image, the midsection. This is not perfect, and honestly, I just realized another way I could have done this. So hang on one second. Because this is a solid black image, I'm going to go back and do this. Okay, so anyway, so I could do that, could do my layer mask and whatnot, but I'm going out. Doing here. There you go. Control D, deselect. Haha. Now, if I do my magic wand. Yay! There we go. See, that just selected all my black. That was so much faster. See? All right, so now let's zoom out. Now, Control T allows me to transform. I can drop this size that I. Okay, so now part of why this is important, because if you notice, over here I have a little bit of overlap on that light fixture. Totally okay with, except that that's the only thing that overlaps. So the whole mid part of my image is off center. So really quick, let me scoot this up. I'm going to grab all of this, except for that frame. And I'm just going to move it over a little ways because I don't want to be too far off center. That kind of sticks out funny. I don't want to feel too unbalanced, but I think that'll help. This back. And I'm visually trying to keep that as centered as possible. Although if there's ever a discrepancy, I always try to go just a smidgen up and make that bottom margin just a smidgen wider than the top margin. And it's an old graphic design trick that I learned in school. If you have something that's perfectly centered, it's actually going to feel like it's falling towards the bottom of the frame. Whereas if you lift it just a smidgen up, that actually kind of balances it in the mind and doesn't have that feeling. So quite often, if you get art professionally framed and matted, they'll actually cut the mat in such a way that the image is just a little bit up. Okay. Now I'm going to font tool or my text tool, a little bit bigger than 624. As you can see, the last thing I used was Mistral. I want something a little more. I don't know. Everything I do is very feminine. But again, that's my client, so I want something a little bit smoother. Honestly, I think for this client, I think City Blueprint is the best bet. Okay. Okay. I want to set that down a little ways. And then the last step, creating a mood board, is I'm going to eventually share this on once the client has over and gets that wow factor of this being their project. Here's my logo. Never stays that big. I just tuck that down here. That way, if I were to share this on social media, if I were to put it on Instagram or Facebook, something, it's just got my logo on there. I mean, I'm sure it's possible to cut it out, but I would have to go to a fair amount of trouble to do that. I think this is pretty good. I'm not 100% convinced. I still feel like there's a lot of empty space in this. Should be. But one thing I'm going to do real quick, I'm going to move my border out of the way. I'm going to select all of it. So I did a bounding box, which grabs everything. Bigger. Kind of re-center it. There. Grab my border, bring it on back up. Get it up above that bottom edge. All right, that feels a little more comfortable. So, and I think much as I'm debating fighting it, the plant, it just does. It needs a color. It needs something. So I'm gonna hop back over to image search. Not looking for anything crazy busy. All right. Pop that in. Now this is one where I will use the white part's always a little bit tricky, but I am going to use the synthetic. So zoom on in here. Try and stay as close to the border as possible. It's going to catch up a little bit in that shadow. And the reason I like this magnetic tool is especially when you've got a lot of curves and ins and outs, like Ooh. I forgot you can't zoom while doing that tool. Can you tell it's been a little while since I've done some of this? You know, some programs I use on a daily basis, some I don't. Okay, so we're going to escape out of there. We're going to start over. Okay, start. Yay! Problem is when you're zoomed out a little further, it doesn't catch those edges as refined. But as I said, the reason I like this magnetic tool versus the funnel tool is because I find I have a little bit easier time editing it. If I go in here real quick and I do my start, I go to my corners, and I'll use my mouse. I'll click on those points sometimes just to remind the mouse program that hey, this is an important part. I'll sometimes click on those little. Okay, we're back to the beginning where that 0 is. You can see it's selected. Now I can zoom in bit by bit. Oh, yes. Now, if I hit the Alt key, it subtracts. If I leave it in the plus, it adds. I'm going to go back here. Add out to here, which we can see is the correct edge. Computer program didn't recognize it right. And here I do these things just one by one. So now I've got this weird little blip out here that's not correct. So I'm going to hit the Alt key, trace that edge, and I'm deleting that from what I've selected. See how that first one added, the second one deleted? Again, I'm going to go over here. I don't need all this extra space beyond the shadow. I've hit the Alt key. A little more. There we go. And I'm getting rid of that extra little space there. Now here I need to add this in to get this edge right. Oops. And it's still not perfect, so I might have to do that one more. And you can manually sit here and click really, really tight circles if it's not picking up what you want. Sometimes it's just not worth it. Now here I'm subtracting this section. This little triangle. I'm going to zoom back out. Deleting this big triangle here. Easy. Okay. The first little bit's good. Now we gotta go up here. I gotta add this triangle. Really being picky, I'll delete that little triangle. Add in that. Add in this stem thing there. This triangle. And as I'm doing this, I'm just alternating between pressing the Alt key or not. If I press the Alt key, it subtracts. If I don't press the Alt key, it includes. Now there we go. I'm zooming out, and I can see that I've got a smooth enough line down there. Got all my ins and outs here on the top. I've got everything selected that I want, and nothing selected I don't. Again, I'm just going to tap that layer mask. See, it's a little bit off down to the bottom, but then when I use the transform option to shrink this down, desk, there we go. Now that might seem like a lot of work for one little plant, but design is all about those little tiny, tiny details. And although my inkling was a big giant plant on the other side of this image, I think this is much more in line with client envisioning. We will find a way to get something, metal rivets, I don't know. Maybe a pair of like barrel armchairs with nailhead trim or something. That'd be really awesome. But anywho, that is my process. That is what I do. That was actually a fairly simple one considered. So I'd love to have you tune in more. I hope we'll be doing more of these streams on YouTube. I do also have a channel over on Twitch. You can search same username here as YouTube, Revision Custom Design. Also find me on all the usuals, Facebook, Instagram, and like. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'd love to hear your comments. Please leave your feedback below. I'd love to hear. And I